In this next segment, Emerson discusses the importance of books. Lately, part of my routine has been at lunchtime I'll drive up to the local Books A Million, and I spend part of my lunch break reading the sequel to To Kill a Mockingbird, Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. To be honest, To Kill a Mockingbird didn't really resonate with me that much in high school, where it was required reading. But after I passed the bar and was kind of going through the process of setting up my law practice, and I decided to go solo, I decided to reread To Kill a Mockingbird. It had been many years, and upon that rereading, it really resonated with me. And in particular, I think it was because I identified with the adult situations and the adult characters and what they were going through, whereas when I read it in high school, I kind of was more focused on the children's perspective of the events and what was going on. But I found it to be a very moving story. So I'm only about, halfway through Go Set a Watchman. I read it, little chunks at a time. But so far, I'm finding it really enjoyable, and it's very fitting for what I'm experiencing with, at my time and at this stage of my life. I feel like it's very fitting for me. And similarly, is the adult characters. The little girl is all grown up. And also a part that I hadn't anticipated is that the sequel takes place post-World War II. And as a veteran myself, where I often reflect on what life was like in my childhood pre-9/11 versus, what life is like in the post-war years and trying to transition back to civilian life. I find all of that very interesting. But I don't want to go too far into making any judgments on the book itself, because I don't know how it ends. And I've made that mistake before of, giving a rave review to a movie before I'd finished watching the whole thing, and then I go back and watch the second part, and there's maybe something that made me uncomfortable with it, and I felt bad that I had, touted this movie and spread the word for everyone to go watch it. But anyway, there's a particular quote I did want to mention from Go Set a Watchman, which resonated with me very deeply in terms of the experiences of a new lawyer out of law school. So here's the quote. Her father said, "It took at least 5 years to learn law after one left law school. One practiced economy for 2 years, learned Alabama pleading for 2 more, reread the Bible and Shakespeare for the 5th. Then one was fully equipped to hold on under any conditions." So what I really liked about this quote is, the humor in it, but also, in particular, that part where it talks about the beginning, the first 2 years should be spent reading the economy. And as a new business owner, that's really what, I feel like I'm focused on, as I'm trying to figure out these legal services that I provide. How can I price them in order to serve, the needs of the local community, and these clients, what are their needs in the economy? So basically learning how the business part in terms of being a lawyer. And then I find it funny that the next 2 years are focused on pleading, or rules of civil procedure, you might say, or criminal procedure, but rules of procedure, which is something, where I see how complex it can be when, if at the beginning of a legal action, there's various timing requirements and various motions that can be filed, and requirements for the formatting and submitting of your pleadings and all of these things, where I see how it's not something that I'm going to, be a master of on day one. So I see how that, once I learned the business of it, focusing a couple years on developing experience on how to best handle the procedural aspects of engaging in legal disputes. I find that humorous. And then very profoundly, the 5th year, before one is fully ready to take on any legal challenge as they come, according to this quote, is a review of the Bible and Shakespeare. And that really resonates to me because, you know, all these years spent on business and spent on process and procedure and all this stuff. But really, I think what draws many people to the law in the first place, and the power of the law to be able to, you know, be such an integral part of our society, is really the more deeper philosophical aspects of the law, the, you know, right versus wrong, and how, you know, justice and these principles that are timeless, principles that are drawn from the fountain of justice, for those who follow, you know, natural law, and it's, you know, the common law and things like that. You know, so I just really enjoyed this quote. So anyway, you know, this intro, a little longer than some of the others, was just to point out, you know, in this next piece as we go, where Emerson talks about the importance of books and the power of books. You know, that's my most recent experience that I've been having with a book outside of, you know, all my law books and all the stuff I have to read in day-to-day life. So just thought I'd share that with you, and I'll see you next time. They are for nothing but to inspire. I had better never seen a book than to be warped by its attraction clean out of my own orbit and made a satellite instead of a system. The one thing in the world of value is the active soul. This every man is entitled to. This every man contains within him, although in almost all men obstructed and as yet unborn. The soul active sees absolute truth, and utters truth, or creates. In this action it is genius, not the privilege of here and there a favorite, but the sound estate of every man. In its essence it is progressive. The book, the college, the school of art, the institution of any kind, stop with some past utterance of genius. This is good, say they. Let us hold by this. They pin me down. They look backward and not forward. But genius looks forward. The eyes of man are set on his forehead, not his hind head. Man hopes, genius creates. Whatever talents may be, if the man create not, the pure efflux of the deity is not his. Cinders and smoke there may be, but not yet flame. There are creative manners, there are creative actions and creative words. Manners, actions, words, that is, indicative of no custom or authority, but springing spontaneous from the mind's own sense of good and fair. On the other part, instead of being its own seer, let it receive from another mind its truth, though it were in torrents of light without periods of solitude, inquest, and self-recovery, and a fatal disservice is done. Genius is always sufficiently the enemy of genius by over-influence. The literature of every nation bear me witness. The English dramatic poets have Shakespeareized now for 200 years. Undoubtedly, there is a right way of reading, so it be sternly subordinated. Man thinking must not be subdued by his instruments. Books are for scholars' idle times. When he can read God directly, the hour is too precious to be wasted in other men's transcripts of their readings. But when the intervals of darkness come, as come they must, when the sun is hid, and the stars withdraw their shining, we repair to the lamps which were kindled by their ray, to guide our steps to the east again, where the dawn is. We hear, that we may speak. The Arabian proverb says, a fig tree, looking on a fig tree, becometh fruitful. It is remarkable the character of the pleasure we derive from the best books. They impress us with the conviction that one nature wrote and the same reads. We read the verses of one of the great English poets, of Chaucer, of Marvell, of Dryden, with the most modern joy, with a pleasure, I mean, which is in the great part caused by the abstraction of all time from their verses. There is some awe mixed with joy of our surprise when this poet who lived in some past world 200 or 300 years ago says that which lies close to my soul, that which I also had well nigh thought and said. But for the evidence thence afforded to the philosophical doctrine of the identity of all minds, we should suppose some pre-established harmony, some foresight of souls that were to be, and some preparation of stores for their future wants, like the fact observed in insects, who lay up food before death for the young grub they shall never see.